Hello viewers and listeners. In this episode, Feroz continues along the 4 major steps on how to build total wealth by knowing and understanding the world. Feroz will take a view of the world and humanity on a cosmic scale. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the next episode.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Wisdom and Wealth Solution. Hello, I'm Feroz Ansari. I'm the author of the book. And in the previous 2 episodes, we started with the introduction of the book. What is the idea behind it and how we are looking to enhance and develop our total wealth. And we discussed the idea of the concrete box, that we are born into it and we live in it, and how we can carve windows and make a door to be able to step outside our concrete box and see the world in a different light with a new perspective. Then in the previous episode, we covered part 1 of the book, where we focused on knowing ourselves. And in that episode, we focused on religion and politics and biology and genetics, and then free will, determinism, and then also the biases that we have. So that was the introduction and part 1 of the book. Now we will talk about part 2 of the book, which is Know the World. Now it's time for us to look outwards, which is to know the world. I believe that we do not live in isolation. Your happiness, career, relationships, financial security are all intertwined with forces that are larger than any individual or any community. So we have to have a global perspective to be able to make good choices and to prepare for the future. So in this episode and in this part of the book, our goal is to widen our horizon and understand the mega trends of the world, what can influence us, what can influence our family, what will influence our career, what risks do we have, and what opportunities exist out there. So let's start with the big picture. Let's take a cosmic perspective. So astrophysicists believe that the universe began 14 billion years ago. But imagine that Earth sits in this perfect location. We are not too close to the sun that everything burns, or we are not too far that everything would freeze. So this is sort of a miracle or a highly improbable event that Earth sits in this perfect distance from the sun so that life could thrive. So the reason why we are talking about taking a cosmic perspective and reflecting on these ideas is to understand our existence in this universe. And I think when we think about our consciousness, our existence, it should create a degree of awe. And awe, I believe, is the beginning of wisdom. So again, imagine that you have just won a $1 trillion lottery. We exist. Earth is at the right place in this galaxy, at the right distance from the sun. And then imagine your own existence, this miraculous event that you exist and you have consciousness. And then as we look at, as we take this cosmic perspective, I want to quote Einstein, where he said that as our circle of knowledge expands, so does the circumference of darkness surrounding it. So I believe that the more we know, the more we realize how little we know, right? And I think, again, it should bring awe, it should bring humility, and it should add gratefulness to how we see the world and how we see our own existence. So let's reflect on history, and let's reflect on where humanity is today. If we go by what we hear in the news, by what we see in the social media feeds, by what we see on our TV screens, we would tend to come to a conclusion that the world is, that the state of humanity is deteriorating, that the quality of life is getting worse, that there is more conflict, there is more suffering. But the reality is different. So we have to step back and let's look at a few numbers to recognize the remarkable progress that humanity has made and it continues to make. So in 2000, the global life expectancy was 66.8 years. Today, it is over 73 years. That's a big achievement. If you look at under 5 mortality, right, since 2000 has gone down by 52%. Extreme poverty, back in 2000, 30% of the world's population used to live in extreme poverty. Today, that number is 8.5%. And then 68% of humanity is connected to the World Wide Web. These people have access to the internet, they have access to information, they have the ability to communicate. So think of all these numbers and recognize the progress that Homo sapiens and humans have made. Looking at it differently, in terms of conflict, in terms of war, where we are. If you go back and look at the era from the early 1900s until now, so during 1900 to 1925, we have the First World War, and 2.6% of the world population died in that conflict. That was, fatalities were huge. From 1925 to 1950, we had the Second World War. Again, it was a really tragic period in human history. Even when you look at periods from 1950 to 1975 or 1975 to 2000, and then the last 25 years, you would be surprised to know that both in absolute numbers and, of course, in relative numbers, the number of people dying in wars has gone down. What is really surprising that from 2000 to 2025, that number is at 0.05% in terms of people dying in wars and conflicts around the world as a percentage of the population. But the absolute numbers are also minuscule compared to the previous decades or going back to the early 20th century. Now, so that's about the overall human condition. Now, look at individual life, how lifespan and health span has been expanding. Someone who was born in the early 1900s, they would expect to live to age 40 or 42. Today, that life expectancy is over 73 years around the world, and in the US, this year, we are getting close to 79. So both from a lifespan perspective and health span perspective, we are living longer and we are healthier. So people who are 50 years or younger, right, they can expect to, quite a few of us or quite a few of people at age 50 or younger can expect to live to age 100, right? We say that 70 is the new 53, right? The cognitive ability of a 70-year-old is similar to that of a 53-year-old back in 2000. So we are healthier and we are living longer. Ray Kurzweil, a futurist at Google, believes that humanity is at the verge of escaping the longevity escape velocity. What is longevity escape velocity? He believes that 10 years from now, humanity every year will add 1 more year of life expectancy. Of course, this may be more optimistic than reality, but we must recognize that we are living longer and we are healthier. So what does it mean? What are the implications for wisdom wealth? What are the implications for financial wealth? If we're going to live a lot longer, we need to be working longer. We need to save more. We need to invest differently because we are going to be in retirement for a lot longer. So humanity has made tremendous progress. our lifespan has expanded, our health span has expanded, and contrary to what you would see in the news media, the world is a much better place today than what it was 10 years ago, 50 years ago, or 100 years ago. Now, the world is changing, and in the last 25, 50 years, the technological progress that we have seen is immense. First, the World Wide Web, right? Then we have EVs. Now we are talking about AI. And AI is a profound technology that will change humanity. But I also think that it is going to take time. Like every innovation, every new invention, it takes humanity time to adjust, adapt, and be able to utilize the technology in the most effective manner. But AI also creates tremendous amount of risk in terms of, can machines take over? Will it create high unemployment? Will it create a really challenging environment for young adults? Those are questions that I do discuss in the book in tremendous amount of detail. But as we explore AI, which is going to be integrated into our life, whether we like it or not, I would recommend that we use the 3 A's or the 3A process to be able to engage with AI, which is awareness. Learn what AI can do for you. Action. Integrate AI into your work, into your life. And then accept that AI is here to stay. It is a profound technology, and collaborate with AI to be more empowered. So that's a big change that is going to happen. It will have impact on careers. It will have impact on productivity. It will have great impact on economies. And we should be ready to be able to deal with that change. Now, as all these positive developments are taking place, we also have to recognize the risks that exist. So we must appreciate that we are the most advanced generation in Homo sapien history. Yet, never have we had so many ways to end our own story. That's the reality. We are immensely resourceful, but we are also very dangerous. Humanity never had the power to destroy itself. Today we do. So we have to understand, what risks do we face? What risks do we have as individuals and as families? And understanding these risks is not about fear, it's about foresight. How we can plan, how we can mitigate, and how we can manage these risks. What are the 3 big risks that we are concerned about? Of course, nuclear war is always a risk. Pandemics, we have just experienced it. It did not exist in our consciousness until a few years ago, but now we all recognize what pandemics can do and how deadly they can be. And then climate change. So these are the 3 big storms, and again, AI, I believe that it's going to be a change for the better in terms of how we integrate AI in our lives, but there's also a risk. Can the machines take over? Can they create unemployment and social strife? Those are all things that we have to be mindful of and we have to plan. Now, our careers, our life, and our financial wealth is very closely tied to the economic currents, to economic developments, to geopolitics. And in the last 30 years, the biggest economic story in the world has been the rise of China. How the Chinese economy has grown, how China has become the world's factory. And now it's no longer just the world's factory, it has evolved into areas like technology and defense. So China is now a rising power. So there is history, and there is this idea that when we have an established power, which today is the United States, and when we have a rising power, which is China, does it create the risk of a conflict? Yes, it does. But I'm more optimistic about relationship between US and China because we are deeply integrated. Our economies are tied to each other. But if you look at Chinese growth, back in 1990, the size of Chinese economy was 400 billion and US economy was 6 trillion. Today, Chinese economy is about 18 trillion and US economy is about 28 trillion. So Chinese growth has been an economic miracle never seen before in human history. So China is becoming economically powerful, and they at some point will start asserting this economic power. But the interdependence that US has with China in terms of trade will most likely avoid a conflict or a hot war. Of course, we can have a trade war, but that's very different than having a hot war. So I think the interdependence is sort of the safety valve that we have between United States and China. So in addition to economic integration, what the world has also seen in the last 30 years is a fast-paced cultural amalgamation. Of course, United States leads the world in ideas, and part of it has to do with Hollywood, because Hollywood is able to promote American values and American lifestyle across the world. But now with social media, it's a two-way street. Eastern and Western cultures are coming together, and it's happening at a pretty fast pace. So in this environment of cultural amalgamation, how do we not lose our identity? How do we cherish our values and our cultural wisdom? That is the challenge. We do not want to become sort of a monoculture across the world where there's only one set of ideas, one set of values, one set of traditions. I think the diversity has value, and as we continue on this path of cultural amalgamation, we should still be able to cherish our own culture, our own tradition, our own values. So I will now quickly summarize what is in part 2 of the book and what we just discussed. So part 2 of the book and our discussion is focused on know the world, which is appreciating our context and appreciating our environment. So first, we look at the cosmic lottery that each one of us has won, being conscious, our existence, Earth being at the right distance. That is really a cosmic lottery that we have won. The past 200 years have been phenomenal in terms of growth and prosperity and peace for humanity, and especially the last 50 years have seen tremendous progress. The world is changing at a rapid pace, and technology is at the core of this innovation and invention that we are experiencing. So the world is changing. We are in the best place that humanity has ever been. And what are we going to do with this lottery, cosmic lottery, that each one of us has won? So knowing the world is important to benefit from the risk and opportunities that are presented to us in our environment. So again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to welcoming you to the next episode of the Wisdom and Wealth Solution, where we're going to talk about Know Your Purpose. That is part 3 of the book, and that will be the topic of our next episode. Thank you for joining, and I look forward to welcoming you to the next episode.